Before I came to China, I had a few Chinese friends who would have an English name. You're not going to pronounce it right. They'd choose a name so you don't mangle their so-called real name. But here in Luzhou, more now, they're likely to maybe meet foreigners. But even 7 years ago, it was very rare that they would meet a foreigner. But they still would choose English names. It's not uncommon for their English class. They would just choose an English name. But I would meet other adults who would say, oh, my English name is blah, blah, blah. Which I do remember in Spanish class, we chose a Spanish name. But I would not meet a Spanish-speaking person and tell them, oh, my Spanish name is Elena, because I never really identified with that name. So it's a little different. When I first started teaching in China, I taught at middle school. Many of the kids already had English names, and we learned to do, on the first day, choose an English name, and we had a whole wall of suggestions for boys and girls, and we'd have to tell some of the boys, oh, these are girls' names. You can choose the name Linda. I'm open to whatever you want to call yourself, but Linda is generally a girl's name. And they liked conforming to their gender, so they appreciated that heads up. In middle school, a lot of the kids already had English names because English education starts really early in elementary school or kindergarten. Occasionally a kid would ask me, can you find me an English name? So I'd ask their name, what it meant, and I'd go home and I'd look through like online baby name generators to find a name that either had a meaning close to their meaning of their name in Chinese, or at least sounded like their name. For middle schoolers, most of them had an English name already. I would very carefully spend like an afternoon researching, like, what is your English name? Never mind that some of the kids of English named themselves iPad or Obama, but the kids who wanted an English name wanted a real English name. I mean, Obama is a real English name. So I am naming kids left and right, and I don't really have time to be that conscientious about it. And also, they don't really care if I am. It used to be everybody wanted to have like a similar sounding name, and there was lots of like candies and lilies and a lot of the same names. But now everybody wants a distinctive English name so that they stand out. So now I do try to pick, still based on what does your name sound like. I try to find you an English name that sounds like your English name, which is why there are a lot of lilies, because Lily, those are kind of like similar Chinese phonemes. The parents then always ask me, oh, well, what does this mean? English names don't have meanings. Like Chinese people give themselves names. Chinese names are actually like words that mean something. American names, they have ostensibly a meaning. Like Emily in the baby books is brave or stalwart or something. But we don't use Emily as a vocabulary word other than as a name. So they always ask me, well, what does this mean? And I say, it means Emily. I've been pretty good so far. My favorite one is I named a kid Yogi because his name sounds like that in Chinese. He's kind of a cut up. And I named a kid Ziggy, but he rejected that. I think he probably went with like Bob or something. Yesterday, a grandma approached me on the street. I didn't recognize her, but she recognized me because everybody knows Teacher Emily. And she asked me how her granddaughter was doing. And she was saying her granddaughter's name. She was repeating these 3 words over and over, and I figured out, oh, that's your granddaughter's name. But I didn't recognize it because my Chinese is okay. Chinese names are still really hard for me, so with my students I really do have to give them English names or I don't know their Chinese names. But anyway, so I asked, 你知道她的英文名吗? Which is, do you know her English name? And she thought for a second and was like, Sheila. And I was like, oh, Sheila, who is in fact one of my students. And so I told her, oh yeah, Sheila's doing great. And she was like, oh, that's good, because she practices at home, but we don't understand English, so we have no idea if she's doing good or bad. So Sheila is doing very well. I have 2 unofficial Chinese names. One of them, 𝗖𝗵cie，was given to me by one of my students my first year, just because it sounds like Emily. And the first name in China is actually your family name, so I is an actual Chinese family name, but it also sounds exactly like the word for love. 美丽 is beautiful. So The name means beautiful love, which I'm not wild about. When I was practicing writing the name, one time I used the character for I with the ko radical, which actually makes it mean ugh. People here say ayah to signify annoyance. So for a little while I was writing ugh, beautiful. So now I know how to write that name, which is why I actually do use it in certain situations, like getting a package delivered, or on my 𝗖𝗵cie delivery for my name, I put my Chinese name because that's easier for delivery drivers to understand. And like at work, I sign my Chinese name on my paychecks. That's just easier for them to read and understand. So one time, someone called for 𝗖𝗵cie, and they were like, "Is this Miss I?" Yeah, I guess technically it is. I am Miss I. But actually, that's the name I don't like, because I don't like telling people to call me beautiful love. It feels... I let the face speak for itself. I don't need to tell people I'm beautiful. So the name I've picked for myself that I don't know how to write, so that's why I'm not actually using it anywhere, but I chose the family name Long, which means dragon, because I always wanted to have a fierce name. And then I had another student who used to pronounce Emily as 𝗖𝗵cie, and I really like that mo as a middle sound. So I chose 𝗵𝗨, which is jasmine. So Long 𝗵𝗨 is the jasmine dragon, which is the name that I like, but I don't know how to write. I have to figure out how to transition. I mean, I guess I just have to look up how to write it and then change my 𝗖𝗵cie delivery name. Like I said, I don't use it for anything official, so the Chinese government only knows me as Emily Catherine 𝗵𝗵. I don't know, if I get a driver's license or something, it could be helpful to have a Chinese name. Peter does not have a Chinese name because he doesn't really want one or need one. Sometimes if people ask, they'll say, you could be 𝗣𝘂, which is just the Chineseification of Peter. They use it for Peter Parker, who is Spider-Man. But yeah, so it's not uncommon for us foreigners to choose a Chinese name to make things easier. That's why, I guess, why we all choose a different name. It makes things easier in some instances. My first year teaching was hard in many ways, but it was really hard. Like I said, if you don't understand Chinese, the Chinese names, they just don't stay in your head so good. So well. At the end of the year, as like a fun quiz game, you know, we had English trivia, English questions that I knew they would know the answers to. As an effort to kind of get their names better in my head, I had them all write their name down in pinyin, because there's no way I could have read the characters at that time. Which I didn't realize, these were younger middle school kids, so they had actually just learned how to write pinyin, I think. But anyway, so they wrote their names down for me in pinyin. I would pick a name out of a hat and they would have to answer the question. But it turned into the two kids in front. I was still struggling even with the pinyin. So they'd help me, they'd read the names, and then they'd help me to pronounce the names. And the class would just go wild when I would say the names in Chinese. So the whole exercise actually turned into Emily reads Chinese names rather than an English quiz. But it was fun anyway. It was the end of the year, so it was a nice way to go out. So in 7 years of teaching, I've met a lot of Chinese students and I've met a lot of English names. And I kept a ledger one year, a class list of everybody's English name. So these are actual English names of my students that I had. Of course, there are a lot of traditional, for lack of a better word, regular sounding names, but they seem to be very attracted to like specific ones. I had a lot of Veras and James and Nicks and Amy's. Amy is, I know like 70 Amy's. I had a lot of Alice's, Jeff, Leo or Lee was very popular because those sound like Chinese names actually. Gladys, I had one Gladys, which is cool. Diane was very popular, Kevin, Stephen, and Lily also was very popular because, again, those sound like Chinese phonemes. There was one class I had 5 girls named Lily, so I would call them like Lily Xu or Lily Yang or Lily Xiao, which would be their actual family names in Chinese. They liked that, so. But for the fun names, the kids would choose these names to be funny on purpose. So it's not like I'm making fun of, oh, they're so stupid, they don't know. They were being silly. So that's why I feel like I can share them with you. So of course there were several iPads or anything in the Apple family. iPhone 4, iPad Air, iPad 2, any of those people liked to choose. Kobe, I had a lot of Kobe's. There was CCTV 1, which is the television here is called CCTV, and the channels are CCTV 1. There's also CCTV 2 in that same class. I had a boy named Dan Green. He gave himself a last name in English too. Timor, which I think came from a video game. Egg Brother. I don't know why, but I liked it. Obama. There were a lot of Obamas. Osama. There were a few Osamas as well. Sunshine. Nice. Sponge. Sponge was a student teacher, and she said she chose that name because she wanted to learn everything. She wanted to soak up English like a sponge. So I actually thought that was a really beautiful reasoning behind that name. Curly, because his hair was curly, nominally curly. It just happened to not be stick straight. Mr. Super, he was a favorite of ours. Small White. This was actually her name in Chinese, and so she just changed it in English to Small White, which is also not anything on her, but that's also how they name their pets, their dogs. If it's a big dog and it's black, they'll call it Big Black. If it's a small dog and it's white, they'll call it Small White. We've met several animals with names like that. Elma. Durant. I think that's a basketball player. Axe. A-X-E. Winer. W-I-N-E-R. I think he meant winner. Then I had someone called Green. And someone called Shite. Sea. S-E-A, as in the ocean. Liger, as in the mythical beast. VIP. That's a nice one. Sherlock, which the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock show is very popular over here. So that's where that came from. Nike. Edison. Wolf. Ricardo. Valentine. King. Air. Lemon. Mary Lennon. That's another one. She gave herself a last name as well in English. Superman. And Ninefer. Ninefer is actually an old colleague of mine. And her original name was Nina. But she wanted a new English name, and we were joking around. She didn't like the name Jennifer, but she liked the Ifer. And so we all kind of joked around like I was Emily Fur and there was a Amy Fur. But she actually kept using Ninefer as her full English name. So I like that one a lot.